The courthouse building was quiet. The guard didn't need to stand, there was no one to check. He sat down on a chair and opened a magazine. Suddenly, the door creaked open. It seemed like whoever was opening it was struggling. The guard jumped up and hurried to the heavy oak door, gently pushing it. Standing in the doorway was a skinny 6-year-old boy with a scraped knee and big sad eyes filled with determination. Clutched to his chest was an old stuffed rabbit. "What are you doing here?" the guard asked sternly. "Children don't belong in court." "I need to see my dad," the boy mumbled and dashed toward the turnstile. He swiftly ducked under the barrier and headed deeper into the building. "Hey! Stop!" the guard shouted, rushing after the boy. The boy ran down the corridor, then abruptly stopped right in front of the judge's chamber. Without hesitation, he grabbed the door handle and pulled it towards himself. The guard didn't catch up to the boy until he was already inside the chamber. "Judge Moreno, He just stormed in. I didn't even blink." The guard panted. "Daddy," the boy cried out and ran towards the judge. "You're really my daddy, right?" Judge Moreno rose from his desk and looked at the child. A picture flashed before his eyes. He was 5 or 6, just learning that his father drove the truck delivering groceries to the store near his house. He had run into the man's arms just like this. But the man had pushed him away, calling him a stupid kid, and started unloading beer crates. At 37, he remembered it as if it happened yesterday. The judge looked into the child's eyes. Where had he seen them before? They were so familiar. Of course. The boy from the orphanage. He often visited there. They even called him the benefactor of the orphanage. Charity was an important part of Judge Moreno's life. He lifted the child into his arms, looked into his deep eyes once more, and smiled. "Son, you finally found me," he said. The secretary and the guard stood gaping in astonishment. Gustavo Moreno and his mother lived in his grandfather's house. Despite his grumbling, the old man loved his daughter and grandson dearly. Poverty was a constant companion to the family. Grandfather caught fish and sold them at the village market, while his mother worked for a farmer. Gustavo never saw his father, never even knew who he was. His mother abruptly shut down any attempts to learn about the man. Over time, the boy stopped asking. Then the local boys decided to play a prank on naive Gustavo Moreno, telling him that Bruno, the driver who delivered goods to the local store, was his father. He believed them. He wanted so desperately for his life to have a father, a real father. But little Gustavo only gained another childhood trauma when he ran to embrace that angry truck driver. He cried for 2 hours in the attic of their ramshackle house before falling asleep. His mother and grandfather frantically searched for him. Life changed dramatically when grandfather passed away. He went fishing and never returned. They found him in the boat. He had managed to tie it up upon returning from his catch. His heart just stopped, simply refused to beat any longer, that's all. Nothing held mother and son in that godforsaken village anymore. Mother made the decision to move to the city. Money was scarce, but she decided to take the risk. There were more opportunities for her and her child in the city. Everything fell into place from the very beginning. Mother got a job as a janitor at the school. Gustavo started attending that same school. They lived in an annex to the school building, where the caretaker used to reside. But the former caretaker's lodge had been abandoned for several years already. Then Yolanda married a school teacher. Gustavo gained a little sister, Conchita. Gustavo studied well, grasping everything on the fly. He was determined to get a good profession and break out of poverty. One day he asked his mother, "What is that building opposite our house?" "That's an orphanage," his mother replied. "There live children who have no one in this world. You see, there are 2 buildings. One houses the very little ones, and the other is for children from 3 years old." "Why don't they have anyone?" Gustavo inquired. "That's just how it happened. For instance, they all died, and there is no one to take care of the poor things. The boy became sad. He wanted to do something good for these children, but he didn't know what or how. One day, he and his little sister were passing by the orphanage fence and noticed a little girl with curly hair crying, huddled against a tree. "Why are you crying?" Conchita asked her. "Today they took Miguel home, and I'll live here all my life." Tears streamed down the little girl's reddened cheeks. "Don't cry, I'll give you my bunny. He's magical and grants wishes." The girl squeezed the plush toy through the fence bars. "Really?" The girl stopped crying for a moment, asked. "Really? What's your name?" "Elena." "Bunny, always protect Elena and bring her luck," Conchita said. "He'll do it. Always keep him with you and don't give him to anyone else, then everything will be very good in your life." They walked on, but for some reason, Gustavo often recalled the face of that little girl, especially at night, sometimes lying sleepless in bed. Years went by. Gustavo entered law school. The young man swiftly climbed the career ladder. By the time he was in his early 30s, he became Judge Moreno. He remained in the city where he and his mother had moved from the village. His stepfather and mother moved to the neighboring town. There, the former teacher was offered a position in a private school. This happened back when the guy was still in university. Gustavo achieved the goal he had set for himself in childhood when that mustachioed, gruff truck driver roughly pushed him aside and called him a fool. He became a successful man with a substantial fortune. Devoting his entire life to his career, he, at the age of 37, still hadn't started a family, although if he had beckoned with his finger, a crowd of beauties would have flocked to him. But his finger was firmly pressed to the gavel, an integral part of any judicial process. No one could have imagined that a judge with an impassive gaze could speak to some boy in a crumpled t-shirt and a scraped knee like this. "Let's go," Gustavo said, effortlessly holding the boy with one hand. "Where?" the boy asked quietly. "To the shelter," the judge replied shortly. The secretary and the security guard exchanged glances. Judge Moreno simply didn't want to cause the boy any pain, but now he would just return the child to the shelter. It would cause the same pain, but just a little later. That's what these two thought. "Why to the shelter?" the boy asked tearfully. "We need to tell everyone that you found me, settle some formalities." "Formalities?" The boy looked puzzled. "Are they mean?" "No, a bit tedious, but not mean," Gustavo Moreno chuckled. Suddenly, he glanced at the stuffed rabbit the child was holding onto. Embroidered on its chest was the inscription Moreno. Gustavo felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, and shivers ran down his spine. It couldn't be. Could it be the same rabbit that little Conchita had given to the girl from the shelter? What was her name again? Oh yes, Elena, the girl from the moon. "Where did you get this rabbit, kiddo?" Gustavo asked, seating the boy in the car. "He's been with me since birth," the boy smiled. "I guess my mom gave him to me, and then left me at the shelter." He looked about 6 years old, but he reasoned like an adult. Gustavo's heart ached. This person always knew what he was doing. Everything in his life was in order. But now the judge was behaving completely uncharacteristically. What had come over him? Why did this kid evoke such a response in his soul? As if he truly had once been his lost son. Maybe he just saw himself in this little rascal. Possibly. "Judge Moreno, do you realize what you're doing?" Senor Fernandez asked, adjusting his glasses on his nose. "This is a child." "I'm aware, Senor Fernandez," Gustavo replied calmly. "I want Vito Moreno to become my son according to all the rules of the law. I'll start the process today, and I believe all formalities will be settled by Monday. But Monday is only 2 days away. Ample time if we don't procrastinate and proceed with the matter immediately." The director understood. For the judge, with his connections and influence, this was a 5-minute affair. "Can I take the boy for the weekend? And on Monday, I'll bring him back here to complete all the formalities." "I think, yes," replied the old director, pushing a blank application form towards his interlocutor. You need to fill this out. It's the